Hey, 8th grade, welcome back. We're in chapter 2 now, where we're going to be talking about equations, relations, and functions. We got a lot to do in this section where we're learning about solving equations, so let's just go ahead and get started. First thing I have here is a little 4-step guide to solve equations, different things you want to look for while you're trying to get the variable by itself and solving for x. The first thing we're going to want to do is use the distributive property. Remember back just this past chapter in chapter 1 where we talked about the distributive property, something we've been using for a couple years. We know how to do it. Use the distributive property to get rid of the grouping symbols or the parentheses. Second thing we're going to need to do is we have to move all of the variables to one side and all the constants to the other. Remember, constants are just numbers. They're integers in the equation, or fractions or decimals or whatever types of things are in there. Constants are the numbers, not the variables. Variables are the letters. All right, number 3, the third thing we're going to look for is to simplify on each side of the equation. So you combine the things that you can combine. If you have a 4x and a 5x, combine those. If you have a 15 and a 5, combine those on each side. The fourth thing we're going to want to do is use the operation inverses to isolate the variable. All right, we're going to isolate the variable, meaning we're getting it by itself. Operation inverses, remember, are addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So to get rid of addition, we use subtraction. Okay? So let's start here with a couple examples. We've got some pretty basic equations. We've been solving things like this for a while. So this is just the front side will be a little bit of a review. All right? We already have the variable by itself here. We have no parentheses, so we don't have to worry about that, which means the first thing we need to do is use the operation inverses. There's nothing to simplify, so we can start by getting rid of a minus 5. Remember, you want to do the reverse of the order of operations, which means we're starting with addition and subtraction first, then the multiplication and division. That's one of the biggest mistakes I've seen out of you guys doing this, is not knowing what order to get rid of things. Get rid of addition and subtraction first. So those cancel out, and I also have to add 5 to the other side of the equal side. Remember, we have like a wall here where we do it on one side of the equal sign. You also have to do it on the other. So that gives me 20 is equal to 4x. Now I got rid of all the addition and subtraction. Now I get rid of multiplication and division. So divide by 4 on each side, and 5 is equal to x. All right. Second example we have here, a little bit more difficult. Again, first thing we need to do is check to see if there's any parentheses. There's no parentheses to get rid of. All the constants are on one side. We can't simplify on either side. So we need to start by getting rid of things. I have a positive 3 here, so I need to get rid of that first, which leaves me with a negative x over 7. Don't forget this minus sign here. It stays as a negative sign. Gives me negative 5. Now I need to get rid of multiplication and division. I see division, which means I have to multiply by 7 to get rid of it. And that tells me that negative x is equal to negative 35. And if you remember, minus x, or negative x, really means negative 1 times x. So I have to divide by negative 1 to get x by itself, and that tells me x is equal to 35. Okay? And the last review example that we have, 17 minus s divided by 4 equals negative 10. Now this is a little bit different of an example. Let me scroll back up here for a second to see number 2. Okay? We're going to start differently in number 3. Notice how in 2 that this 7 is only underneath the x. And here the 4 is underneath everything. This is the one case where we're not going to do the order of operations backwards. Before we can start to get rid of addition and subtraction, we have to get rid of this denominator. Okay? When it's underneath the entire equation, we have to get rid of this first. It's being divided, so just like in number 2, we have to multiply by 4. on both sides. That gives me 17 minus s equals negative 40. Okay? Please notice that that's the only time you get rid of multiplication and division first. So now it's just back to a simple equation, minus 17 from both sides, so that negative s equals negative 57. Again, we have a negative variable, which means I have to divide by negative 1 to get s equals positive 57. All right? So those, for the most part, should be review. Now, on the back, a little bit more complex. We have variables on each side, and we're going to have some parentheses here. Okay, these are the ones that are the Algebra 1 level equations that we need to really focus on being able to solve these. Okay? First, I start by looking for parentheses to get rid of. I don't have any of those. But notice I do have variables on either side, and I have constants on either side. So what I have to do is to decide which variable or which side I want to take variables to, which side I want to take constants to. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I want to take my variables to the right side. The reason I want to do that is to try to avoid negatives. If I think through this real quick, if I were to take this 10x and subtract it, I'm going to end up with a negative 14x. I don't like working with negatives, especially in front of variables. So what I want to do is I'm going to look and I'm going to see if I add 4x to both sides, that's going to keep everything positive. And I have 3 equals 14x plus 10. Since my variables came to the right, that means my constants have to go over to the left. So I have to get rid of that 10. And that gives me a negative 7 equals 14x. Okay? Now again, we're back to just a simple equation that you've done forever. Divide by 14. Negative 7 divided by 14 is the same as simplifying it down to negative 1/2. So x is equal to negative 1/2. All right? It's very important that you keep track of which side the variables go to. If we had done it this way, where I took the 10 to the left and took the 3 to the right, you would still have gotten the same answer. So don't think one way is right or wrong, or you have to pick which side is the right way to take the x's to. It's not the case. It does not matter which side you take them to. I'm just trying to give you little tips on how to make the equations easier to deal with. The less negatives you have, the easier it is to solve. So this, another example here. 3 times the quantity 1 plus x minus 5 equals 3x minus 2. We need to get rid of parentheses. This is the first equation we've had them. So distributive property, or magic hat pat. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times x is 3x minus 5 equals 3x minus 2. I haven't done anything to the right side yet. Okay. Now I see I have a couple things. I have variables on each side, and I have constants on both sides. So let's take my variables to one side and constants to the other. This side, this one, it doesn't matter. So if I subtract 3x to get rid of that, I'll have 3 minus 5 equals negative 2. The 3x here and 3x here cancel out. Okay, 3 minus 5 is negative 2, and I end up with negative 2 equals negative 2. Okay, what this means is that I have infinite solutions, and so my solutions are all real numbers. That's the symbol for it. Okay, it's just 2 lines, 1, 2, then put an R. That means I can plug in any single number that I want for x, and it makes the equation true. In these other equations, like up here, the only thing I could plug in for x is negative 1/2. That's why that's the solution. For this, since that x canceled out, I can plug in anything for x, and the equation's true. Okay? Now you'll notice at the bottom there's a special note. It's not every time the variable cancels out that you get all real numbers. Okay? I think we've talked about this before. But when the variable cancels out, you get 2 scenarios. One, the numbers are equal, and there are infinite solutions. That's the one that you just saw. Negative 2 is equal to negative 2. That's true. Okay? That means there's infinite solutions, or we use the symbol all real numbers. If the numbers are unequal, meaning if it had worked out and it said negative 3 is equal to 4, we know that that's false, and so that means there are no solutions. And the symbol you can use for that is 0 with a long line through it. That's the empty set, meaning you cannot plug in anything for x. Okay? We've covered a lot in this section here, I know that. So make sure that you are prepared. You do a lot of the practice. You focus while you're doing the practice in class. Ask me a lot of questions. Solving equations is the biggest thing in algebra. Everything that we do for the rest of the year is going to revolve around solving equations and simplifying equations and expressions. All right, so we'll see you in class, and have a good day. Bye.